I think.
We do.
Welcome back to another happy hour Monday. It is Perri and Maggie. I don't ever know how to introduce us, but we are here. It is Victory Monday. The Packers are 2-0. That is right. We are 2-0, not just in the league, but in the division. So we took down the Detroit Lions yesterday in another 40 burger because our offense is on fire. So we're feeling good today. Yes, we got to give a quick shout out to our man from Scotland, Robin, who not only comes most weeks, but left us a message because he couldn't come this week. Is just the best. So Robin, when you watch tomorrow, we say hi and we miss you. Welcome everyone joining. All right, Maggie, let's talk about the game yesterday.
Man, there's a lot to talk about.
All right, initial thoughts. Give me the quick 30-second elevator pitch of how you think the game went.
Yeah, I mean, the first half, first quarter, I was like, okay, here we go again. Standard Lions game where we're going to be trailing the whole time and we're going to be sweating and it's just not going to be that enjoyable. Sanjay on Facebook had said that he wanted an over-under on how many beers we drank in the first quarter because of the stress level. I think I was 2. That's not
2.
Yeah, so typical Packer game. But no, I mean, I think it really took until the second half to kind of open things up. And then, we saw kind of some explosiveness out of the defense that I don't think that we got in week 1. So it was refreshing to see that. And it was refreshing to see that the Packers could play with a lead and maintain it and not have, the Lions kind of creep back into things. So
absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely, I think, a rough first quarter for the defense. They just really looked like they were asleep. Took them a bit. But I agree with you. I think that if the rest of the game was any indication, we really kind of put the Lions away. I think the only reason there was nerves was because it was right off the bat, right out of the gate, 14-3. Oh my God. But at the end of the day, the defense only gave up 21 points, which was actually what we had predicted the Lions would score.
Good job, us.
That's what she said. Yeah. Obviously, as Andy Herman actually said today, it's kind of net 7 since we did have that pick 6. But at the end of the day, dropped another 42 points on team and kind of took that game away pretty quickly. I'd say it was the start of the second half was that 75-yard touchdown, and then essentially it was over from there. So hi Blake, hi Jacob. Sorry, I can't not give Blake her shout out. Happy belated birthday, little one. So let's start out we keep saying the offense was super explosive, dropped 40-something points, but let's dig into the offense a little bit more. Obviously, Rodgers had another fantastic game, not as quite, vintage lights out as last week, but still incredible. 18 for 30, definitely a few drops this week, 2 touchdowns, had his first sack of the season, and 100.6 rating. Aaron Jones was the star of the show. Last week it was Devontae Adams. This week it was Aaron Jones with 236 yards from scrimmage, 3 touchdowns. 68 of those yards were receiving yards, which was actually the highest of everyone on the team. So he had the most receiving yards over all the other wide receivers. I think MVS had 63, so he beat him by a couple. And a receiving touchdown. Just absolutely scorched the Lions' run defense. So we did it a different way this week, and that's pretty fun to see.
Yeah, and I think the official total was 6 drops, which obviously Matt LaFleur had said that the team needs to work on cleaning up. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, they're finding ways to do it differently. And Devontae Adams had the hamstring injury that doesn't seem like it's going to linger, but they kept him out more as a precaution. So the Packers were fortunate that MVS didn't have to leave the game when he had that dirty hit. Or just, I guess, unfortunate. I don't really think it was intentional, but it definitely looked like it could have gone a lot worse than it did. So I think the Packers were fortunate that he was able to stay in the game. Allen Lazard got his looks. I think to me, probably the most concerning aspect of this offense right now is just the productions from the tight ends unit. I mean, Robert Tonyan did have a touchdown, so I think he made up for it. But we saw a couple Jay Sternberger drops. We saw a Bob Tonyan drop. Josiah DeGuara's nursing an injury, so he wasn't even in this week. But, I mean, I think that would kind of be the key to putting this entire offense together.
Yeah.
Even with the reshuffling of the offensive line, that's why you pay guys like Lucas Patrick their contracts. He played pretty much all over the entirety of the interior of the offensive line these
Yeah.
last 2 weeks. So, Corey Linsley, it sounds like avoided injury, but I kind of just want to give you the floor because everybody that you love on this team has been performing for this offense, So, yeah, Aaron Jones, Corey Linsley, those were probably two of the key performers, I think, for week 2.
Hi, Tyler. Welcome. Yeah, it was really fun. I think, like we mentioned, we beat them in a different way. I think, we saw Devonta Adams do Devonta Adams things last week. When he was taken out of the picture, we still were able to move the ball. I think Allen Lazard was, again, absolutely clutch on 3rd downs and had that 4th and 6 grab. I agree with you about the tight ends. I did love to see Mercedes Lewis get 2 catches this game. So more than normal.
A career high.
Career high, yeah. But, we really were able to run the ball quite well against them, not just with Aaron Jones, but Jamal Williams had a fantastic game. I think he had around 60 yards. And so it was nice to see. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was, the way Matt LaFleur is kind of exploiting the defense. And last week it was pretty much just Aaron Rodgers carving up the Vikings secondary in the passing game. And this week it was more than just, I think, the run game, but we were making the line secondary go sideline to sideline, right? Like we had a lot of pre-snap motion. We had a lot of crossing routes, and the Lions, as we know, don't disguise any of their coverages. They're always in man. So to make the cornerbacks just run back and forth across the field was just a new version of exploiting a very weak secondary that I honestly wasn't expecting, but did wonders. It was almost too easy to watch them. And like you said, Corey Linsley, he just the whole offensive line, honestly, just gaping holes. Mercedes Lewis and, as just that extra, I think, offensive lineman in some running plays, just absolutely gaping holes for Jamal, for Aaron. Really, really well done, especially for a group that's kind of had a lot of rotation on them.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this a little bit after week 1 too, but now that we have a second sample size and you have to take everything in the first couple weeks with a grain of salt, the Vikings and the Lions haven't had spectacular secondaries. So I think that, week 3 is going to be a more true test for this offense, but it really just feels like everybody's buying in. When you talk to Aaron Rodgers, when you talk to Aaron Jones, they all are quick to emphasize, this is what Matt LaFleur had envisioned for the offense. And we're just more comfortable now. So it was we bought in last season, but we were buying in with a limited understanding of everything. So we bought into the best of our abilities. And now they've had an entire off season. They've grown together through even I think the Zoom meetings are things that kind of benefit you when you're not there in person. It alters how you study and how you kind of look.
You really got to dive in.
Yeah. And, Aaron Rodgers had talked about the way that he kind of reflected internally and realized things that he had to work on. So I think overall, Aaron Rodgers studying his 2010 film, that's the kind of stuff that probably would not have happened in a normal offseason when they're at Lambeau every day. So right. I think just kind of those aspects, you can really, really tell that the players have a respect for what Matt LaFleur is doing and they understand it. And I think it was Nathaniel Hackett last week in his presser had said, with the motions, they had players that were what are we doing? Why are we running constantly? What is the point of this? And now in the second year, right. Yeah. It takes that time to develop, but now that the players understand what it does, that buy-in is huge because they get it and they see the effect that it can have.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. I think it was Aaron Rodgers who said at first, I was why are we doing so much pre-snap motion? And then you realize how much it uncovers from the defense, and it allows Aaron Rodgers to kind of see what kind of matchup he has and take advantage of it. And I don't know what he saw in that tape, but I think the combination of whatever that is and that Matt LaFleur scheme is working is why he's playing so well. I was looking today when I rewatched the game, because I was able to rewatch the game before happy hour. I saw a lot of Rodgers in the pocket. Yeah. Rodgers was playing from the pocket, a clean pocket, obviously flushed out a little bit, whether it's scripted or, it's just him being Aaron Rodgers, but just so much more comfortable getting the ball out fast. Again, the offense was on rhythm. So it's clearly whatever Matt LaFleur is calling, like you said, they're bought in. They love it. He's getting all of their personnel involved too. You see all 4 running backs again, all of the wide receivers. I think it was before the second half had even started, Rodgers had thrown to 6 different pass catchers, whether they be receivers, tight ends, or running backs. So spreading the ball around again, just like last week, and it's working. They scored another 42 points, so it's working.
Yeah. I think it was, it might have been Dusty Evely who had mentioned this initially, but just like you can see the way that Rodgers is processing this offense in his second season, and he's doing everything that you would want him to do to indicate that he's comfortable in Matt LaFleur's offense. Like, we saw towards the tail end of McCarthy's career, a lot of audibles at the line, kind of tucking the ball and scrambling, maybe forcing balls downfield, but I think he hit like a check down to Aaron Jones for like 5 yards, but just like these little simple things that, I think his rating was just astronomical when he gets the ball out in under 2.5 seconds. So it's all these little things that I think he had gotten away from, trying to be the hero of the offense because the offense needed him to be that. Yeah. So now with this Matt LaFleur offense, he's realizing that the scheme can get guys open and he doesn't have to, have his offensive line block for 8 seconds and scramble and make miracles. And I think that's the buy-in that's been so key is when Aaron Rodgers buys in, like, you don't really need to convince anyone else. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and he's scheming guys open, like you said, but Rodgers has also been accurate as hell. So, like, it's almost impossible to defend that when you're scheming guys open and you get, like, a very accurate Aaron Rodgers. Like, the ball is going to be placed exactly where the receiver can catch it with no way to stop it, and the offense gets rolling. I think it's also, like, nice to note that there's only one penalty. It was on a holding call on David Bakhtiari, but the offense has been super clean in that regard. I still don't love the fact that they're taking timeouts to avoid delay of games, but if that's, that my one negative for this team right now in terms of offense, it is what it is. I love how clean they're not beating themselves.
Yeah.
I also loved that Matt LaFleur is just being aggressive. He's going for it on 4th down in like the first drive. He's going for 2 when they're already up by like 19 points for like no reason other than to just say we can and let's seal the game away by making this a 3-score game. So I love his aggressiveness. He obviously trusts that the players are going to execute because they have been, and they're really putting games away because of it.
I think another, like, I like the 2-point conversion example, and I think building off of that too is like the 4th down attempts. Like, it wasn't like, hey, it's 4th and 1, we should try. It was like, it's 4th and 7, but let's just do it. And then they were able to successfully complete and sustain drives. And I think that, we had talked about this a little bit in the offseason, and what we were looking for in year 2 of the Matt LaFleur offense was just the ability to sustain drives. And I think, we saw the defense getting gassed being on the field so much, the Packers getting frustrated by not being able to convert first down. So just kind of, I think that buy-in again from even Matt LaFleur into his own scheme, like, hey, especially with the motions they have in place now, like we can dial up the right call to convert a 4th and 7, which is something that last year felt like it would have been unheard of because, they were barely able to sustain drives. So yeah, I think that was to me one of the most impressive aspects of yesterday too.
It's also interesting to me that like if you're a team in, let's say we're playing you in week 6, 7, 8, 9 later on in the season, and you're seeing that the Packers very, very often are going for it on 4th down and more often than not converting on 4th down, that completely changes the way that you play this offense and the way you defend them, because every drive isn't just 3 downs. You have to play for the 4th thinking that they're going to go for it. And I think that's just a really interesting sort of like power move that the Packers haven't been able to do really since like 2010, 2011, when this offense was like, maybe 2014, when this offense was like really clicking. And I like it. I like the aggressiveness. I think I want to see us play a team like the Saints, and see how this offense works against a team like that. But it's hard. I'd be hard pressed to say that there's another offense that's not playing as good as we are right now.
And I mean, I think it's hard to call it like a litmus test because obviously the whole narrative from last offseason was that the Packers were like a fraudulent 13-3 team. Not really sure how that happens. You play who's in front of you, and if you beat them by 1 score or 12 scores, it'd be like that sometimes. So I think like using the Saints as a team that everyone kind of put up on a pedestal is like, this team was really good. They stayed really good, even though, the Packers made it farther in the playoffs, but
it's a weird perception, isn't it? Yeah. It's a very weird perception that the Saints are somehow better.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll find out. Like, and one game's not going to make, a
No.
world of difference as far as a measuring stick. But I do think it will be the Packers' biggest test, and I think that that's important.
For sure. And I really like this question. It's hard for me to say, and I know we're going to switch to the defense in a little bit, but we'll probably wrap up some last minute thoughts on the offense. But I don't think that the winning is on the shoulders of either side this year. From what I've seen, I actually have trust in both sides. I think it's easy to say that the first 2 drives for the defense were unnerving, but the rest of the game was quite complete to me, right? Like we shut them out in the second and third quarter. We allowed 1 touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and that was it. So I don't think it's so much on their shoulders, but I do love that it gives our defense a cushion to say, okay, our offense can go out and score 40 plus points. And that gives us, the ability to maybe let up a touchdown, even though I personally would rather it be 42-0.
Oh, absolutely. We would always take 42-0 over anything. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think that there's like this dynamic. And for the longest time, I think we talked about this a little bit in the offseason as well, but this team has been looking for balance. And it's always been like, we have a really stout defense and the offense can't move the chains. Or you have like a 2011 offense and the defense is like worst in the league. So just having this kind of like this meshing where there isn't one unit that is stout and one unit that is, miserable. It's kind of dragging your team down. I think this marriage, and I know Matt LaFleur talks about the marriage of the offense specifically, but kind of this marriage of having, a decent pass rush when you need it, or a decent run defense that, kind of helps the back end of your defense, or having Aaron Jones opposite Devontae Adams as a complement. Like there's all these different elements that work together to make this team, I think, more effective and more efficient than what we're used to seeing.
Absolutely. And so let's switch over to the defense then, because it was definitely an interesting game. And I like to think that like if the Lions touchdown drives had been more spread out over the course of the game, that we would be less inclined to have negative comments or negative thoughts towards the defense. It was just that they came out like guns blazing, scored 14 points on, 2 back-to-back drives. And we were like, whoa. And I said, I think I tweeted out on Twitter, right? Like it's interesting to watch the Packers defense play when they're behind and then when we're ahead, right? Like it's almost like a test for us to say like, okay, how do we play when we're behind? And can our offense do it? And obviously they can. And then the defense sort of tightened up. It was like they needed a shot of espresso. I don't know.
I like that. I always need a shot of espresso. So.
I do. I like my coffee. So, but at the end of the day, after the first 2 touchdown drives, it was pretty much it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to most of the player interviews after the game, but, Chandon Sullivan had been talking about how, like, they said, like, kind of what changed from week 1 to week 2, and he said, like, it was just learning from their mistakes. And, I think we're seeing, not to, like, totally change the subject, but the benefits of having at least 1 or 2 preseason games as far as getting your bodies in shape, all these different domino effects that the preseason has, even if your star players don't necessarily play a ton. I think there's a conditioning element to it, but having those game reps, like Chandon Sullivan had said, like going from week 1 to week 2, we cleaned up the mistakes, and then Coach Patton dialed it up. Like he was like, they brought the pressure when we needed it, and then we were allowed to do our thing and make plays in the secondary. Right. So I think that was kind of something that was missing from week 1. So just, the fact that it's now clicking in week 2, I think that's another building block that's going to be beneficial for this defense moving forward. And when they get Kenny Clark back, knock on wood, whether it's against the Saints or it takes a couple more weeks, or maybe we see him after the bye, that's going to be significant if the rest of the defense is clicking by then.
I completely agree. You kind of forget that like this team is playing without their best run defender and one of the best interior defender, I would say, in the league. And so the fact that we actually could kind of somewhat stop the Lions run game over the course of the rest of the game is honestly says a lot. I think that, I don't know if this was actually something that changed, but I'll get to Rashawn Jacob. Okay, I'm getting there. I think that something that I noticed that I didn't love the last 2 games is that I don't know if Pettin had him doing this, probably, but Pettin was having Preston Smith drop back into coverage.
He did that last season too.
Preston is not look. Outside linebackers can drop back into coverage. They occasionally. Preston Smith trying to cover a very shifty DeAndre Swift is not going to work. And so when Preston started doing what Preston is good at, which is rushing the passer, him and Rashawn were getting home and actually affecting Matt Stafford and affecting the game. But dropping him back into coverage against a running back and even against TJ Hawkinson at one point was just not, it was not working. And I don't know, what the conversation was during halftime, but they switched around the second half. Chandon Sullivan came out, looked like a completely different player. Preston and Za'Darius and Rashawn were actually getting pressure on Matt Stafford. So I'm glad that at least Pettine is showing us that he can make in-game adjustments.
Yeah, and I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but, and maybe this is a rhetorical question more than anything, but the fact that you have Preston Smith, who is obviously in your top 2, top 3 edge rushers, and you're taking him and dropping him into coverage, what does that say about your confidence level in Oren Burks and Ty Summers if you would rather have Preston Smith and sacrifice some of that edge pressure to help the middle of the defense when you have guys who run, I don't know what, a 4.5? And
I don't know. I really the inside linebacker position is just such a question mark to me. I don't have any answers. I don't, except for that Chris Barnes looks great. Chris Barnes looks great for someone who was an undrafted free agent to come in, get cut, come in and play the last 2 games. I just think that he has been playing well. I loved that he got in there and tried to punch the ball out against TJ Hawkinson. I just like the way he's playing. I do want to talk about your guy, Christian Kirksey, because I really think that their tandem played much better this week.
Yep.
I thought that last week Christian did a really good job of making it to the ball carrier, whomever it was, and sort of getting that first touch. But he had a really hard time actually taking him down to make that first tackle. And he really cleaned that up this week. And he had, I think it was 10 tackles, which was the highest of the whole team, and had a much cleaner game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that a lot of that is comfort in the defense. And, again, I don't know how much he would have played in the preseason, but you talk about a player that was injured for his last 2 seasons after having a really, really strong 2016, 2017, where he looked really good. So I think there was a shaking the cobwebs off, shaking the rust off element to some of that. But we had talked about this a little bit on Packs What She Said. Friday, whatever day that came out. I don't know. Everything blurs together now. But about one of our matchups, last week sometime, one of our matchups to watch being the inside linebackers against the tight ends, because we knew that TJ Hawkinson was going to be a bigger test for them than Kyle Rudolph or Irv Smith Jr. So I thought that he definitely kind of showed up. And when you have a guy like Alvin Kamara now, or God forbid we have to listen to Taysom Hill conversations for the next week and a half, kind of Jared Cook, it's another test yet again now for that inside linebacker position.
Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting. I love this question from Aaron because it definitely leads me into talking about the secondary. And honestly, my biggest disappointment so far this season has been Darnell Savage. I expected him to come in and have that second year leap. And for the most part, I think he's really struggled. He had a lot of tackling issues yesterday, couldn't really get there. And I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what's going on with him.
Yeah, he would have been my pick, but I'm going to call an audible because I don't want us to agree all the time, because everybody thinks we already agree all the time. But I'm going to say Jay Sternberger. And I think that maybe is not fair criticism, because this is by all accounts his rookie season. He was injured for so much of last season. We can't really call it a rookie season. So it seems like he's kind of going into this, and the spot that we see him on the depth chart, kind of that third tight end, makes sense. But just the drops, if he could clean some of that up. I mean, he has a role carved out for himself in this offense. He just
100%. And
every
Rodgers
time he
went
drops
to him.
Yeah, and then he drops the ball, and then now Rodgers is not going to go back to him for a while. So I think that is a huge element that this team needs.
Right. And I completely agree. I think if you looked at Darnell during college, he played the majority of his snaps in the slot, and they have him more as that last line of defense, roaming the backfield. And I know that's where they need him to be, right? We have a slot corner, and it's Chandon Sullivan, but I just don't know if he's being used in a way that's really going to maximize his skills. And that worries me a little bit. But I think the rest of the secondary did a bang up job. I mean, okay, let's talk about Jair Alexander.
Please just talk about him, because I can't say anything that's gonna like.
Because he is making a case for himself, just as we predicted that he would have a lights out all pro year. He is everywhere. And I love that even when he gives up a reception, there are no yards after the catch. You're going to get tackled immediately and he's going to take you down. And there was this one throw, I don't even remember who it was to on the Lions, but he was just, it was Marvin Jones, I think, or Marvin Hall. He was just on his back, perfect coverage, no penalty, just smacked it down. Just so beautiful. He is doing everything he should be. He's everywhere. I actually loved the way Pettin sort of deployed them. They were much more in like man-to-man press than normal. Yeah. And I loved that because they did it well. Something that you messaged me about today actually was just that Kevin King wasn't targeted once, which I thought was a really interesting tactic by Matt Patricia, because so you're going to go after our best corner instead? I don't get it.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe that's a testament to what players or, coaches are seeing when they watch Kevin King. But yeah, 0 targets to anyone Kevin King was covering. And, Kevin King he can be as good as they come when he's reliable, but we've also seen him make, kind of mental mistakes that lead to big gains. So I think that is kind of one of the biggest question marks I have for this defense right now is just why? I mean, it bodes well for Kevin if that's the case, is that they view him really as like, a shutdown corner where they're not even going to test him. But just, I mean, as a Packers fan, like even with a biased perspective, like you would think that you wouldn't want to test Jair Alexander after the game he had in week 1 where he got a sack, safety, and interception.
And he could have had another interception if Marvin Jones hadn't caught the bounce off. Jair was right there to grab that from him.
That was his interception last week with Thielen. Exactly. It was so close to being the same thing. Yeah.
Not to bring up the Vikings, but did you see that Kirk had another safety?
Yeah.
I just thought that was so funny. No, but I agree. I don't know why you would test our best cornerback. I don't, especially without Kenny Golladay. If Kenny Golladay was in and you want to get that one-on-one matchup of arguably the Lions' best receiver, sure, go for it. Kenny Golladay has torched Jair in the past, or I shouldn't say Jair, but our secondary in the past. So, but without him, it was confusing. And I know you've heard me say, I just don't get Matt Patricia as a head coach. I don't see it. I don't get it. I don't think he's it. He comes from the Belichick tree as this defensive mind. The defense is bad, and so is the offense. So I don't get it.
But his son has such a cool mullet, Perri.
Okay.
He's going to be the next head coach.
He will. He will. I mean, look, I understand it's like the Sean McVay thing, right? It's you come from Belichick, you must be a good coach, but I don't think Matt Patricia is it. And I think we can talk about how the Lions have all these weapons, and they do. TJ Hawkinson is going to be a stud. Matt Stafford is a great quarterback. He is the second best quarterback in the NFC North. But when you don't have a play caller who does the right things, and you have a team that I feel like the Lions always beat themselves. You know what I mean? They gave up 30 yards in penalties for us to just go in and score a very easy touchdown to Rob Tonyan. And it's just this is why you lose all the time. You can't do that against a team like the Packers.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that, I think, you nailed it. It comes back to Matt Patricia. At the end of the day, all those mental miscues and things, it's attributed to the way that you're coaching your players. And I don't see it. And I agree with you. It feels like another Josh McDaniels failed experiment where maybe he has learned and he'd be a better coach in a second go of it. But yeah, the Matt Patricia thing just doesn't make sense to me.
No, not at all. So I'm going to ask you a question on the fly.
Okay.
What was your game changing, momentum shifting, whatever you think it was, play this game?
Oh, well, I think we're going to have the same one. So it was Rashawn Gary generating enough pressure for Chandon Sullivan to get a pick 6. But bar none.
Yeah. I would say arguably the Aaron Jones 75-yard touchdown.
Those two were
But those two. Yeah. I mean, the Chandon Sullivan pick 6 was beautiful. It's what you want your defense to do. Generate enough pressure up front to have the quarterback throw a bad pass and have your secondary make a read and capitalize on it. It just happened to be within the Lions' 20-yard line, and Chan Sullivan did a Jimmy Graham run into the end zone, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I do want to let you kind of talk about Rashawn Gary before maybe we jump into like listener, viewer, what is this? They're watcher questions, because I know Rashawn, you've been the conductor of the Rashawn Gary hype train for a very long time now, and it's well deserved.
It's me and Jacob Westendorf. We
co-parent.
Co-conduct. We co-parent. We co-conduct. But okay, here's the thing about Rashawn is that he was taken as a developmental prospect. So yes, he was taken 12th overall, and you want your 12th overall pick to contribute, but he was always going to be developmental. It only took one season for him to develop. So like, let's chill on the hate. And second of all, he leads our outside linebacker team in sacks and QB pressures right now. Okay. He has 1.5 sacks, 6 tackles, 4 QB hits, and a tackle for a loss. It's more than both Z and P. Not saying that he's going to have a better year than both of them, but I just want I want there to be like perspective on, what it took for him to like reach where he is, and to have 3 edge rushers who are dangerous. And we're seeing Za'Darius really, really roam over like everywhere across the line. It's scary. It's definitely scary. I didn't think that we generated a good amount of pressure in the first half. But the second half, we got home. So I was very impressed with his performance.
Can I soapbox for like 10 seconds?
Go for it.
Okay. So Rashawn Gary is the exact reason that you don't look at the 2020 Packers draft and discredit it from the jump. Because Jordan Love is not going to play, and we knew he wasn't going to play his first season. A.J. Dillon could have the same type of productivity that Rashawn Gary has in a very crowded edge room. Even if the Packers re-sign Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon is your second or third Big B, third back, and he can contribute that type of, dynamic to that running game. These are all things that you want from your players. And as far as we know, for our entire existences, the Packers are a draft and develop team. So we're seeing development now from players like Rashawn Gary. And I promise in 2021, we will also see development from players like A.J. Dillon and Josiah DeGuara and Kamal Martin and John Runyon Jr. and Vernon Scott and Jonathan Garvin. Thank you. I'm done.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's true. Like, if you pay attention to the way the Packers personnel develop, it has always been draft and develop. It hasn't been until Goot that we've really gone out and signed really big free agents to come in and make immediate impacts. Ted Thompson, honestly, I think besides what? I don't even know. Like, it was always draft and develop, is my point. Yes. And everyone's saying that the 2020 draft class didn't do anything. Well, first of all, that's not true. Second of all, it's okay, because 2018 and 2019 are actually at the point where they can make immediate impacts. And you're seeing that, like Kingsley Keke being in for Kenny Clark as the nose tackle and subbing in for him and doing a pretty damn good job when he's out. You're seeing it. And
I know.
Sorry, you got me all hyped. But also the 2020 draft class is contributing. Josiah DeGuara, if he wasn't hurt, would have been in, yesterday. So I don't know. John Runyon has come in for the offensive line. You're seeing a lot of rookies contribute. And I know that A.J. Dillon only went in the fourth quarter when we were already up, but his first down sealed the game and allowed Tim Boyle to come out for victory formation. So I think that narrative is dumb, and you're obviously not paying attention to the way the Packers handle their personnel if you think that they draft for need. Good teams don't draft for need immediately. Good teams develop. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. Okay, let's take some questions.
Let's do it.
Yeah, thank you. This is Charles Woodson was a Ted Thompson example. Thank you so much, Ryan Howell. So let's get some questions in here. Yeah, Vernon Scott with his first career sack. Let's talk about Vernon Scott. I would say that the fourth quarter, we saw some of our depth guys come in and do some pretty good things.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that I kind of saw Vernon Scott, and it was really hard to know kind of what the Packers, thought about him when they drafted him, because there wasn't a lot of tape on him. He unfortunately didn't get to have a pro day because of COVID. So we just didn't know a lot about him. And I think he got kind of overshadowed by some of the like first and second round picks that he was playing with in the secondary. But to me, I mean, he fits very nicely into that Raven Green-esque hybrid inside linebacker safety role. So I don't know if he got more snaps at training camp, because we're not allowed to know any of those things now with the media. But like his size and speed combination is really nice there. So yeah, I mean, I think it was impressive. And can we just talk about how good it looks to have number 36 running around the Packers secondary and like getting a sack? Like it just it feels right in Packers fandom.
Yeah, he also had a really nice pass deflection right before he had that sack. So he did a lot more than the sack. I thought the sack was so funny how he kind of like held him. It was like slow motion. I really like this question from PJ. Do you think the Packers will use Swerve and Irvin more in the Saints game? Give Peyton a little taste of his own medicine. I mean, I think we've seen Tyler Irvin a good amount, not just against the Saints, but he does a lot of pre-snap motion to confuse the defense. He's done jet sweeps and some end arounds, and he's been in there actually lined up as a wide receiver. So I think he is a good, like, confusing sort of X factor. It's just will be interesting to see how a coach like Sean Payton, who employs those kinds of tactics in his own offense, is able to defend them.
Isn't this going to be like the Jordan Love breakout game where he's the next Taysom Hill for the Packers offense and we've unlocked like a cheat code?
Could you imagine?
I don't want to think about it.
So funny.
But no, I mean, I do think like with Urban, it was interesting that he talked about how like during the off season when they weren't at the stadium and everything was Zoom, he basically was primarily with the running backs. And then he got to Lambeau and it was like, hey, we're going to try you at wide receiver. And now, like, I know he's still listed as a running back, but he really does a lot of everything for the offense. So I think that is another kind of like wrinkle, like you talked about, and a guy like Sean Payton having to defend against something that he's kind of,
used. Oh no, did we lose Maggie?
No, I'm here.
Oh, did you lose me?
Yeah, you froze.
I'm sorry. All right, Big B. We've talked about Jamal Williams, but let me just tell you now, Jamal is on my fantasy team. I root for him extra every week. If you want to get more Jamal Williams content, tune in tomorrow night because Game On is going to have him on a show. So there you go, Big B. There's our shout out. He's a wonderful running back. What?
I got to start pointing with my left hand because when I point with my right hand, you can't really see it because of my mic. So yeah. Start doing one of these.
Do you see Enforcer Lazard as Matt LaFleur gushed? Yeah, Alan Lazard's been great. He's not just a great blocker, but he's our clutch third down pass catcher. Like Rodgers really looks to him Rodgers really looks to him when he needs to, when he needs to trust someone. And I think to have someone like that when Devontae is out, like we saw yesterday, they kept him out because his hamstring was bothering him. He still has Alan Lazard, and that's huge.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a knock against MVS because I think we are seeing, a more consistent look from him. Like, can we just talk about, like, the conversion he had crossing in the middle of the field where he caught the ball up here? And I was like, that was way harder than his drop against the Vikings. So, it's all mental with MVS. But, I mean, I think Lazard kind of at this point is another, like, security blanket for Aaron Rodgers. And the fact that, like you said, Adams was out, knowing he could go to Lazard. I mean, especially knowing how many times he targeted him on third downs last season. Like, I think that just adds another layer then because, I mean, God, how long has it been since he's had, like, just a core of players he trusts? And I think he was kind of working on that maybe a little bit with, like, Jake Kumro and, like, Alan Lazard at the end of the season. And guys have kind of come on. And I would have been really curious to see kind of what Devin Funchess would have looked like in this offense. Like, we talked about this a little bit. Maybe at this point he's wide receiver 4 because he doesn't have the kind of growth that these players have after having a couple off seasons with Rodgers. But yeah, I mean, I think Lazard definitely is, and he's a phenomenal blocker.
Yeah, phenomenal. It's so interesting to me because you hear that Jacksonville wanted to turn him into a tight end, and I can see why, right? Body type, etc. But he's a really great wide receiver, and yet he can also block just as well as a tight end can. He's so well-rounded, and he fits so perfectly with Matt LaFleur's scheme because you need to have receivers that block. And I think I'm wondering a little bit, and this is so on the fly, it just came into my brain, but I'm wondering a little bit, since our tight end group is struggling a little bit, if Matt LaFleur is sort of subbing Lazard in for some of those plays where maybe Jace or Tanyan would be, if he's taking some of those snaps because they know that he can catch the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. And I think, hopefully we see a little bit more of Josiah DeGuara next week. Like, hopefully he comes back healthy. But I think that he was also a key element missing from the offense. You and I talked about it on Packs What She Said, but just the idea that, against Eric Kendricks week 1, a lot of those wheel routes and things, like, they normally will hit. But because you played, like, the best middle linebacker in football week 1, things didn't hit. Yeah. And then week 2, you had, a little bit slower Jamie Collins. And you maybe could have hit on some of those things, but then you didn't have the players to execute them unless you put John Lovett out there, which I don't think they were as comfortable doing. So.
I was going to say, I don't know that they're going to throw that ball to John Lovett like they would to DeGuara, but John Lovett filled in quite well, I think, with DeGuara out. All right, Tyler wants to know, how disappointing is it that the 49ers won't be at full strength for the revenge tour blowout? So this is a great question because I think we want to talk about the injuries a little bit that hit the league this week. And first of all, Tyler, I actually agree with you because I think that if the Packers win, when the Packers win, that everyone will be like, oh, well, the 49ers weren't at full strength, so we don't really know. Well, you know what? That's the game of football. Sorry, like, players get hurt. That's just how it works. And staying healthy is part of how teams win. And when you can't stay healthy, you're not going to win. And I think that, like, if it was COVID related, maybe we could say, oh, fluke year, but like, injuries are injuries. I will say though, and you and I definitely, I know we agree on this, that like there were way more injuries than normal this week. And I think it has to do with shortened off season and no preseason games. And people can bitch and moan about preseason games and how much I hate them, but clearly these players need the live reps.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, I think this is hard. Like, it's like the same thing that happened with the Chiefs last season where it was like, oh no, they're not playing against Pat Mahomes. Like, fans are cheated. And is it really a litmus test if you don't go up against the best quarterback in the NFL? And it's just like, what do any of us want the Packers to do? Like, say no rain check? Like, we'll come back for you. Like, they don't have Kenny Clark and they might not have him until the bye week. And if they lose to the Saints on Sunday, then is that the excuse then? Is like, hey, because the Saints don't have Michael Thomas. Like, there's every team right now is dealing with a significant injury.
It's just football. That's how it works. People get hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I loved the play Josh Jackson had. It was only one play, but if it's an indication of where he's going, that's great news.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say, Perri.
Yeah.
You kind of nailed it.
If Devontae can't go on Sunday night, do we see Malik Taylor? Well, so it doesn't sound like Devontae is actually that hurt. Matt LaFleur didn't really answer the question in his press conference today, but he did say we could have put Devontae back out there, but since we had such a big lead, we just felt like, why risk it? So it doesn't sound like he's that hurt. I think he'll probably, knowing Devontae, he's going to want to go unless it's like a very serious hamstring injury.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing the way that he played, like, with his self-proclaimed, like, 70% to get back from the turf toe, I think it would take a lot to get him out. Unless it was something that he thought, like, he could re-injure and it would linger, then I would see him being smart about it. But, I mean, the Packers have done a lot of 12, a lot of 21. So, I mean, I think that we saw
22
more.
Yesterday.
I'm still waiting on 32, but maybe that's a pipe dream. I don't know.
All right, Sanjay. Over under 4 touchdowns for Aaron Jones this week.
Under.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sanjay.
Yeah. 3's a lot. Three a hat trick's a lot. I think 4 is aggressive. Wow, so many questions, you guys. I love this. Thoughts on how efficient the offense looks so far in the second year, only 4 punts through 2 games, and tailoring the offense to each player's strength. Really glad we got LaFleur. Oh my God, I love your photo. Hi, Jair. Sorry. What do you say, Maggie?
I was going to say Perri got distracted. That's what I have to say, but
I did distracted.
But no, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit. Like, it's always, to me, players not plays. And when you have the guys that can execute your vision, like, I think we saw a lot of that last season where, Matt LaFleur was scheming up some pretty specific looks, and he didn't have the right guys in his arsenal to kind of execute that. And that's, again, why the Packers went in the 2020 draft to draft guys like A.J. Dillon and Josiah DeGuara, who maybe won't play a ton for the team in 2020, but they'll be role players and will develop, because the Packers are a draft to develop team? That's crazy. But I'm sorry. That's the point. The point
I completely agree with you, because everyone was like, oh my God, this draft was so weird. And it's like, the draft is very subjective. Yes. What does each team need? And did they go out and get the needs? And like, arguably, I personally think that we need another defensive lineman. I still think we're quite thin. And
Ross Blacklock. What?
If you didn't follow us during draft season, Ross Blacklock was Maggie's like ride or die. Mine was Murray. He's now with the Chargers, and I'm very sad about it. But we went out and got players that are going to fit with Matt LaFleur's scheme. And at the end of the day, if that helps us execute on offense, which it clearly is going in that direction, then people may look back at this draft and be like, how did we not see it? We brought in Matt LaFleur, I think, because he is innovative and young and creative and had a plan that impressed Goot and Mark Murphy in where he wanted to take the team forward. And everybody wants the guy that's going to move the team in a progressive direction that's new, that the league hasn't seen, and all this new stuff. And it's the players fit.
Yeah, it's really easy to kind of like pick and choose what fits your narrative when you're trying to make an argument. And I think that's kind of just like a metaphor for the internet. Like, you can do that with anything right now. But like, if you look at, the way Jordy Nelson developed and Davante Adams developed, like it really didn't seem fair. I mean, maybe if you take like a Justin Jefferson or a Denzel Mims, like in the first couple rounds, you're expecting them to make you're expecting them to make an impact, because of where they were drafted. But if the Packers had gone out and got Quintez Cephas in the 5th round, like the Lions did, we wouldn't be having the same conversation. And, you're looking now at MVS and Allen Lazard and guys that have had a couple of years to develop. And the same would be true, I genuinely believe, about EQ if he wasn't dealing with these nagging injuries. So, yes, the Packers could have gotten a guy like Justin Jefferson, and maybe he would have developed into something. But starting the season, Justin Jefferson would have been 4th on your depth chart. And it's because of the guys like MVS who, despite being drafted in the 5th round, have proven themselves to Aaron Rodgers and to Matt LaFleur, and have indicated that there's a trust level there, that you need to be a part of the Packers offense. So, right. I mean, I think it's kind of hard now looking back to be like, hey, what are they doing? They made a mistake. We all thought they were going to take X. If, knock on wood, somebody like MVS or Allen Lazard went down, maybe that would be a different narrative. But I think now it's really easy for fans to clamor for a defensive tackle when Kenny Clark is injured. If the roles were reversed and we were missing a key player on offense, maybe those needs look a lot different, because it's really easy to yell into the void when it fits your narrative. It's a lot harder to admit, that the 100%. Narrative didn't.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think I look back and I think about how many seasons it took Davante and Jordy both to develop into the breakout players that they were. And Jordy Nelson arguably had his breakout game in the Super Bowl. So his next season was his best season ever, where he had over 1,000 receiving yards. That was his 4th year in the league. Davante Adams, it was his 3rd year in the league. So I think it's short-term memory loss a little bit. And it's the idea that Aaron Rodgers is 36 and everyone wants him to get the 2nd ring that we know he deserves, and et cetera, et cetera. But you forget about okay, well, let's look at the last 2 drafts and think about the players who are going to develop into a role that is actually going to help Aaron Rodgers this season. And we're only 2 games in, but MVS is clearly playing differently than he was last season, even at the beginning of last year when he was having a good, before his year dropped off.
Yeah.
He looks different. So couldn't agree more with you, girl. All right. Surprise MVP on offense and defense versus the Saints. Really like this question.
Feels fantasy football related, in some way.
I'm not good at that, so don't come to me for that advice. It kind of depends on who's healthy, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I was really looking forward to the Jair versus Michael Thomas showdown. I don't think we're going to get that. I don't know. That would have been my choice. Offensive side of the ball, I definitely would love to see what what Devontae does against the Saints defense. The Saints defense is very good. And their pass rush is also underratedly quite good. So our offensive line is going to have a little bit of another struggle this game, but Devontae is on one. And my prediction this season was that he was going to have his first all-pro season. And I still feel like he's going to, because he's just clearly on another caliber than anybody else. So I think if he can have a big game, not necessarily the game he had against the Vikings, but another solid touchdown or 2 100-yard game against the Saints, he's making his case.
I keep trying to speak things into the universe and they haven't happened yet. So I'm like, maybe I need to stop trying. But how cathartic would it be as a Packers fan to have Josiah DeGuara healthy, score a touchdown on a wheel route over Patrick Queen? That's my surprise.
Isn't Patrick Queen on the Ravens though?
Fuck, did I get confused?
I think so. It's okay.
God damn it.
But I understand what you mean. I think in general, the DeGuara, I know, the DeGuara on a wheel route just against like Sean Payton would be beautiful. But also, Jamie, no, the Packers can very much win this game.
Absolutely.
And I say that based off of how this offense has looked in the last 2 games, as well as I think a little bit of that home field advantage is gone. You know, the dome is loud. Very much the Saints fans, I think, are very similar to Packers fans. They're very passionate and they're very loud. And it's a hard place to play, and you're taking that away. And I think that unfortunately bodes well for the Packers, and fortunately bodes well for the Packers, and unfortunately for the Saints.
PJ is doing me a solid trying to get me a new TV, so
thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining. We've had so many people come today, and it's so nice to have you all here. Mark, get out of here. Yeah. Okay. This is the energy we need here, is that the Packers are going to win 100-3. I don't think that's actually going to happen, but I think you don't think the Packers are going to score 100 points? Never mind.
You gonna shave your head if they do? I'm just kidding. I would never do that to you. I would absolutely never do that.
Absolutely not. No, but I do think that this is not that I think that the Vikings and the Lions aren't a legitimate test, but I do think in terms of playoff contention, potential challenger in the playoffs, the Saints are definitely the first team that's going to give us that level of competition this year. And it will be very interesting to see, not so much what the offense can do, to be quite honest, but how the defense stops the Saints offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I realize now that I was thinking of Kenny Clark against Cesar Ruiz as my matchup. So I really hope that Kenny Clark is healthy and ready to go, because
me too.
I mean, like, I think Kenny, or Kingsley, Kiki, and Dean Lowry they definitely shored things up at the second half. I think we can agree that, like, there weren't as many gaping holes for the defense, but it's hard without Kenny, and it's hard. I don't really know what it says about your defense when you have such talented players like Jair and Za'Darius, and you still are getting gashed like that. Like, he's a missing piece. And we talk about, the way that, there's a lot of injuries that are affecting a lot of teams right now, but, Jacob Wessendorf, founder of Game On Wisconsin, said that Kenny Clark is the most significant injury to the Packers, not named Aaron Rodgers. And it's really hard to not agree with that after, seeing kind of the way that teams are able to run the ball without him there.
Yeah, I know they haven't really come out and said how significant his injury is. I wonder, honestly, if they sat him this week so that he could rest up for a game like this, and we could have him healthy, because against a back like Alvin Kamara, we're going to need him.
Yeah.
But I do think that we came out as, I think, 3.5 point underdogs. I find that the 3.5 is usually just like given. 3 points is usually given to just like the home team. Yeah. So it's a pretty evenly matched game. I personally would like to see the pass rush come out and really rattle Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a pocket quarterback. He is a statue. He's not a mobile guy. So if we can affect him the way that we know our pass rush can, I think we can stop them.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's a good like key to success. And I think that's why you're going to see a lot more of like Zadarius Smith kind of as like your roaming nose tackle again. And, if you can generate pressure up the middle, even Matt Stafford is a little more mobile. So, you have the ability to kind of spin out or, a quick dump off. I think it's the Alvin Kamara angle that kind of makes me the most nervous is, the Packers defense held up pretty well against Adrian Peterson of all people, like, historically gashes the Packers defense, but, gave up a lot of yardage to Dalvin Cook, and arguably Alvin Kamara is better than Dalvin Cook at this point. So, I think this is going to be true test for that defense.
Alvin Kamara is more dynamic than Dalvin Cook. He's a pass catching back just like Aaron Jones is. I actually think that those two backs are much more equivalent than Aaron Jones is to Dalvin Cook, aka Aaron Jones is better than Dalvin Cook. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left, so I'm going to just wrap up really quick. Thank you all for joining us. Great questions. So much fun talking and answering all of them with you. It's just fun to talk about the Packers winning. Just so much winning. We've scored 85 points. We already have over 1,000 yards of offense. Just unbelievable start to the season. Hoping to keep it rolling for next week. If Aaron Rodgers has 396 yards, he reaches 1,000 passing yards next week. I think he can do it. He would have to light it up, but it's possible for him after 3 weeks to have 1,000 passing yards. That's just crazy. Aaron Rodgers for MVP. Maggie, where can everybody find you if they want to follow all of your amazing work that you do, because you do it all over the place?
Oh, I wasn't ready for this. I didn't have the banners up. You can find me. You can find me on Twitter at Maggie J. Loney. I write 2 articles a week for Cheesehead TV. I'm with the Thursday crew of the Pack a Day podcast, and of course, like the best thing that I do is I podcast with Perri Goldstein for Pack's What She Said. Follow the podcast at PWSS Podcast. Let us know if you want us to make Pack's What She Said shirts and merch, because we want to do that. That'd be pretty fun. So yeah, how about you, Perri? Where can the fine people watching follow you?
You can follow me at Perri_Goldstein. I also podcast with Pack a Day every other Monday with Andy and Alex. And like Maggie said, we have Pack's What She Said that comes out usually every weekend, which is kind of the flip side to this show where we preview the upcoming games. So we'll talk a lot more about the Saints on that, talk about players to watch out for, X factors, some fantasy recommendations, although I don't really know if you should.
Yeah, we're not really that good at it.
My fantasy team is all banged up right now, but Pack's What She Said is our baby. We just had our 30th episode. Honestly, never been so proud of something in my life. So follow Pack's What She Said. You can just find us on Twitter. That's the best place to find us. So again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Oh my God. I would love to have my dad on. I don't know if he would ever be down for that, but I will try to convince him, because this is a genius idea for us. Have the dads on happy hour. My dad likes whiskey and bourbon just like I do. And so thank you all for joining. Stay tuned for everything Game On has this week. Jamal Williams show tomorrow, the Freezer podcast, Lombardi's Bar, Open Book. I'm probably missing some things, but just follow Game On Wisconsin, because so much content out. And as always, we'll wrap it up with Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.